If you've been involved with any sort of Agile project, you've probably run into the practice of user stories. This is a construct that came originally out of extreme programming and has since been adopted by Scrum and many of the other Agile methodologies to the point where it's almost a ubiquitous Agile practice. User stories are your basic unit of planning and execution on an Agile project. I've been using user stories for years, helping others figure out how to use user stories. And I've run into a couple of common misconceptions or at least questions about using user stories effectively. People have been exposed to the Mike Cohn template for user stories, which is, as this kind of user, I can do this so that I can get this business value. And they conclude, all right, this is just a different way to write down what I want the system to do. And that misses the point. People assume that if I can't describe something as something an actual human user is doing with software, then it can't be a user story. And so then they begin to think, well, I can't use user stories if I'm writing back-end software or transactional software where there aren't a lot of humans involved. That also misses the point for me. The emphasis of user story is not on the user part, but really on the story part, the way that we talk about the system. Third problem with user stories is just labeling everything that the team is doing as a user story. Basically, just replacing the word task with the word story. And that also misses the point. You lose a lot of the benefit of the user story construct if you do that. Bill Wake has proposed a 7-letter acronym for characteristics of good user stories, which is the word INVEST, I-N-V-E-S-T. I find that 7 is often too many to remember in the heat of battle. I like to use a simpler acronym, which I call S.I.T, S-I-T. So S.I.T stands for small, independent, and testable. And let me talk about each one of those things. So first, a user story has to be small. And how small? Small enough for a team to be able to build a handful of user stories each iteration. That's the key characteristic of size. That's going to help you with your metrics, your velocity metrics for future planning. It's going to help your stakeholders and yourself see progress throughout the iteration. It's going to help you know if you're ahead or behind during the iteration. And it's going to avoid the problem of putting all your eggs in the basket of 1 or 2 big stories. Good user stories need to be independent of each other, meaning that I can build them in any order. This is important because what we're trying to do with user stories is to discover just how much of a feature I should build. And what I want to do is build a little piece of that feature, and then another little piece, and then another little piece. And I don't want the team to tell me, well, in order to build story A, you need to build stories B, C, D, and E first. All of a sudden, that gives me a lot fewer options as a customer or as a decider. Good user stories are testable, which means they need to represent working software. So there's a temptation, again, to call everything a story. What I really want is a piece of testable code. Now, testable does not have to mean that it's something I can see through the user interface of the software. There's lots of ways to prove to yourself and to others that you built something that does something. You can look at a database table, you might examine a message that's going over the wire, but a story has to be a testable piece of software. So user stories that are small, independent, and testable help us do what we're really trying to do with Agile software development, which is work incrementally and collaboratively discover the right solution.